Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video would suggest, we're discussing the pink ID card again. I did not think I'd be making a video on this anytime soon. I did a couple of videos on pink IDs and yellow house books. For those who are unaware, I've done a number of videos on those, but to sort of summarize, it is possible for a foreign national to get what's called a yellow Tebian bond here in Thailand. And a Tebian bond is like a house book. It's a piece of identification documentation that's primarily used by Thai nationals. But back in '91, they amended the Civil Registration Act to allow foreign nationals to get a yellow Tebian bond. Stemming from that, it is possible to get what's called a yellow ID card, a yellow Thai ID, excuse me, not yellow, pink, a pink Thai ID card, again, title of this video. And that pink Thai ID card, it's in one very real sense, it is similar to a Thai ID card, a blue ID card, which all Thai nationals have. In another sense, it's not, quite frankly. And I got into this, and maybe I sort of injected a little bit more of my own opinion into these videos than maybe I otherwise should, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I didn't realize I apparently caused a little bit of a furor in the comments section in a video I recently did. I'll go ahead and read some of these comments, quoting directly. Stop telling people that a pink ID is not worth having. It is definitely worth having. In fact, when I got my jab, my pink ID was all they wanted to see because it has a number on it that goes in the place of where Thai people's ID number goes. Both the yellow Tebian bond house book and pink ID are worth having. I can renew my driver's license and extend my visa without having to go to the local head for a certificate of residence again and again. And for people who want to avoid dual pricing in national parks, the pink ID is helpful. Stop bad-mouthing the pink ID, Ben Hart. You're a Thai citizen, so you don't know it is useful. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I am Thai, and I'm not dealing with the same thing non-immigrants are dealing with on a day-to-day. I do concede that, no problem. But I have been a non-immigrant before, and I've been a non-immigrant when I could have had a Thai ID, that pink ID. I opted for the driving license. I didn't see the benefits. A Thai ID does provide ID documentation benefits, and yes, it can stand in, especially with respect to address documentation, as noted by this commenter. So fair point there. That is true. But a point, to get into my point on this before I get into a couple other comments, I was more talking about the pink ID because I think people conflate it with, and the yellow house book, with immigration benefits. That's where I've seen people get confused. I didn't really wish to come across as bad-mouthing, so to speak, the yellow house book or the pink ID. But I've seen a lot of people who think it conveys an immigration benefits in the sense that, oh, okay, you don't have to do a TM30 if you have it. You don't have to do 90-day reporting, which none of that is correct. As we've analyzed in other videos on this channel, the Civil Registration Act doesn't have anything to do with the Immigration Act, and never the twain, in a sense, ne'er the twain shall meet. One's an ID, and it doesn't impact whether or not you still have to check in with immigration for purposes set forth in the Immigration Act. That was more my point. And if I seem like I was bad-mouthing it, sorry about that. But the reason I do kind of drive this home is I see a lot of people making errors, or I have in the past more, making errors regarding the yellow house book and the pink ID because they think they don't have to do certain immigration things that they need to do regardless of the fact that they have that ID. Going back to the comments though, one reply to that was, and quoting the prior commenter, it said, quote, and for people who want to avoid dual pricing in national parks, the pink ID is helpful, end quote. And then this commenter commented back, I tried that, didn't work. Yeah, I've seen this before too. In some instances, having an ID, I've seen it happen with work permits. When I was here my first year, I used my work permit to go to a couple of different places, and I didn't pay Thai prices. I've seen pink IDs work. I've seen them not work under certain circumstances. It's just been my experience. Again, it simply is what it is. It doesn't convey a benefit. It's just an ID card. It's just, and yeah, in some places it's worked, as noted by that commenter. Some places it didn't. And then this was something else. This third comment brings up something about the pink ID that and the yellow house book for that matter, that I don't think a lot of folks, especially foreigners here in Thailand, Caucasian Western foreigners, if you will, maybe not Caucasian, but Western foreigners in Thailand don't really think about. I'm quoting directly, it is written clearly on the back of the pink ID card that it only has validity as an ID in the district where you have been registered, and another form ID will be required when not in this district. So if you are outside this district, you will still need to show a passport or Thai driver's license. And that's a good point. Insofar as it simply is what it is. But a piece of history about pink IDs and this sort of documentation is, a lot of this stuff was created initially for folks who live in the border areas of Thailand and for folks who are like hill tribe, the hill tribes up in the north primarily, who are not documented as Thai citizens. This documentation provides some level of localized documentation that they use. I always find it interesting. There's this kind of ongoing dichotomy within immigration policy because, there's a number of different foreigners, but different nationalities, for example, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar, they have almost a different immigration regime than really almost any other nationality. And then there's kind of the other ASEAN members, which may not be as close geographically to Thailand, who kind of have their own regime that they deal with. And then there's the rest of the world. And then there is kind of the West, the Europe and sort of the old Commonwealth countries and the the United States, sort of Anglophone countries. They sort of get treated a little bit differently, and then other East Asians kind of have their own system that they kind of deal with. So long story short, not to get into parsing this down too far, but the pink ID, it kind of has its roots more as a document for folks who are sort of undocumented otherwise here in the Kingdom of Thailand. But the point I'm trying to make is I didn't really mean for this to become kind of a point of argument. And the reason, if I seem to be bad-mouthing it, it was more to drive the point home that the pink ID does not confer any benefit directly with respect to immigration rights or obligations here in the Kingdom of Thailand.